No Mr. Dave Brown, but no problem. We've got the least problematic Masterson to join us today, and this is going to be a whole lot of fun as we talk about if the Twins can trade Christian Vazquez. We'll talk about what the deal is with making relievers into starters, and we'll talk about this dumb golden at bat thing. This is Locked On Twins.
You are Locked On Twins, your daily Minnesota Twins podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Well, hello again, and welcome back to Locked On Twins. I'm your host, Brandon Warren. You can unfollow me on the tweets at Brandon_WARNE. Follow me on the skeets at warren.bsky.social.biz. I don't know what it is. Thanks for making Locked On Twins your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. And as part of the Locked On Podcast Network, we're your team every day. Love to hear from you in the comments, whether it's on YouTube or a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, you name it. We would love to see it. Got a special guest today, and as I said, don't think he's related to Danny Masterson. It's Mr. Gregg Masterson. What up?
That was my tribute to Dave Brown. I decided to start with leaving myself on mute. How we doing, Brandon? I'm doing great. How are you?
I left myself on mute for an entire episode one time. Do not recommend. That's why it's good to have a co-host, because it's a nice little catch-all for any little mistakes that you make, such as not switching your microphone on. Yep, blue light's on, so it's going to be a blue light special here. How we been, though? It's been a while since we've caught up with you on the program.
Yeah, it's been, like a year? I think maybe like last January. Things have been great. I don't know, nothing really to report other than it's Christmas time, so I've got a lot of packages to deliver. So,
I used to work in shipping, so I totally understand. Although my understanding is that it's been 11 years since I've worked a holiday season, and I think it's changed quite a bit as far as shipping. Now everything is like Amazon drop-offs as opposed to, Grammy sending off boxes to all her grandkids. But I don't know. It still means that a fellow like you is still pretty busy, right?
Oh, yeah. About 350 packages a day. It's quite the day. No room in the van to even move around. Love this time of year. It's always busy. So overtime hours are great.
As much as I hated it, I also loved it because there was just a different feel in the air at this time of year. We called it peak season, and it was interesting. But I stopped into the old haunt today to send back a Christmas tree stand, and they were not that busy, which was nice. I kind of felt well for them. By the way, people should never call you Lenny. We're going to make sure not to call you Lenny in this episode. I have it written down in size 20 letters, so no Lenny. Let's just dive right in, though. First of all, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet and get started with $150 in bonus bets. If you win that first $5 bet, visit FanDuel.com to get started. I'm not going to explain the Lenny bit, but for those in the know, it's hysterical. What do we want? I have this mapped out to do Christian Vazquez trade first. And, we can bleed into the second segment just a little bit. But the more I've kind of gone back and forth as I was researching for today's show. And I believe me, I understand that it's probably not believable that I do much research. But Christian Vazquez, -2 baseball reference WAR, plus 0.8 via Fangraphs. So if you're the Twins, you are definitely printing out Fangraphs and waving that in front of the eyes of possibly acquiring teams. But the marketplace so far has seen a multi-year deal go to Travis d'Arnaud, 2 years, $12 million with the Angels. Rays were interested in bringing him back. He had an $8 million club option with the Braves, so he didn't do too much worse on an AAV basis. And then most recently, Kyle Higashioka signing with the Rangers, 2 years, $13.5 million with a $7 million option for 2027. Hard to believe 2027 is a real year 3 years from now. But he turns 35 on 4/20. Christian Vazquez turns 35 nice. 4 months after that. Yeah, right? All of this is a long-winded way of saying I'm still I think they can probably trade him. 1 year, $10 million left on his deal. But what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad that we're talking about baseball. I was getting worried that this was going to be a podcast on shipping, but technically trades are just shipping guys out anyway. Yeah. I have confidence. I feel like there is some sort of market for Christian Vazquez. I don't think that at any point the Twins are going to get anything back from him, and I don't think that they can move all 10 million of his deal. I think that it would be pretty safe to assume that they could move him and eat like 5 million of the deal. But I don't know how appetizing that specific number is for the Twins. The kind of math that I've done in my head, and I don't believe that Jair Camargo is somebody that the Twins look at and think this guy is ready to catch 60, 70 times a year. I like to point out that he was up for like 25. He got 25 days of service time last year. He caught exactly 1 inning. He did not start a game at catcher. They really didn't even have him play much at all. I do not think that they see him as a guy who can be like a pair with Jeffers. I don't know how confident I am that they feel okay running Jeffers out 100 times to catch any year. So part of the calculus that I always have with a Christian Vazquez trade is I'm trying to think it out is like, you're probably going to need to get like a million or two out of that deal that just goes straight into getting a new backup catcher.
Right.
And so, at that point, like you really need to have at least like maybe $6 million off the board so that you have 4 million that you can do a little with. But I do think that there is a market for Christian Vazquez. I do think that the Twins can move him. It's just going to be a question as to how much of his contract a team is willing to eat.
Well, I think it's tricky because if you eat half of it and spend another, let's say 3 to 5 on a backup catcher, which not that that's preferable, but what we're seeing these guys go for makes it not that unrealistic. I mean, Higashioka is going to be on at least part of a platoon with Jonah Heim. I don't know if it'll be the short side, significant short side, or if teams are going to kind of do the 2-catcher thing like the Twins have done, getting back to, Castro Garver, Castro Jeffers. I don't know. Maybe they didn't do Castro Jeffers. I know Jeffers Garver was not well received by either of those guys. But something I come back to, though, is if you really want to find out what you have in Ryan Jeffers, do you pair him with like, and I don't mean this disrespectfully, but like a decrepit veteran so that you can give Jeffers all he can handle? And if you find out that Jeffers can't be that guy, you're already going to be playing your Martin Maldonado. I'm just using that as a placeholder, not specifically him, more than you want. Basically, it comes down to what is Christian Vazquez worth to you? What is he worth to someone else? How much can you get them to take on? If they can take on all of it and you accept back in return very little, if anything, like there's a lot to figure out there. And then two, you look at the remaining catcher market, and we'll go over that after the break. If you wait it out and the viable options to play 50, 60, 70 games a year are all gone, that might create a new marketplace for Vazquez. But if someone comes calling now, or if someone comes calling later, can you, in your mind, earmark money that was going to be going to Vazquez to a free agent, knowing you'll move Vazquez later? Like, these are the inner workings of a front office that I think maybe fans like you and me don't understand or know about. That would be intriguing to, get inside of Derek Falvey's brain and find out where he stands on something like that.
Well, yeah, because I mean, if you're waiting on the catcher market to kind of try to solidify itself, or like, all of the names that you would take over Christian Vazquez to be gone, you're also kind of battling against the fact that you might not necessarily have somebody who you can replace Christian Vazquez with.
Right. You need
for example,
from the outside, not inside.
So like, for example, did Stallings go back to the Rockies? Is that what's happened?
Yep. I didn't have it on my list either, but yeah, Stallings would have been a really nice, like, hey, play 25% of the time kind of guy.
Right. And so, that was kind of one of the names that I had in mind for, he's going to go for a $1 or $2 million 1-year deal. If you're moving Christian Vazquez, he's a totally viable candidate to be just a standard backup catcher.
Yep.
But if all of those guys are already gone too, by the time you're looking to try and move Christian Vazquez to a team who's wanting one of the, I struggle to call Christian Vazquez like a high-end catcher, but like a starting caliber catcher. If those teams are all of a sudden, there are no names on the free agent list anymore. Who are you replacing him with at that point? Are both sides of that spectrum going to be depleted by that time? So it's kind of a waiting game in terms of the market, which I would love to know kind of what the discussions for Christian Vazquez are right now and what those behind the scenes discussions are. That would be amazing if we had any insight into that. But I think that that's one of the most interesting aspects of an offseason when you're trying to move somebody, is trying to play it's almost game theory,
Yep. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, I'm going to go down the list of a catcher still available via MLB trade rumors, and we can just kind of discuss if they do anything for either of us in terms of viability. But again, first, quick break. Well, we got to show some love for our friends over at FanDuel. You can get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if that $5 bet hits. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page you place your bets. It's like having the red zone in your back pocket. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. Again, you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if that first $5 bet hits. You got to check it out, FanDuel.com. That FanDuel app. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, we are back. And so let's go through this list of catchers. And actually the first one, I have called up his Fangraphs page, and I'm thinking this might not be the worst sneaky pickup. Tucker Barnhart has not been a good offensive catcher pretty much his entire career, but there have been years he's been a pretty good defender. He is only going into his 8th season, which I say only is not no, so never mind. Sorry, I saw that he had signed with the Reds, but that was a re-sign or a signing during the season. John Heyman posted that. Sorry, I am just flustering all over the place. No, with that said, rolling it back here. He has been a good defender at times in the past. He's really like a 60 to 70 weighted runs created plus guy, maybe at this point of his career. But that's not entirely unlike what Christian Vazquez brought to the table. He did not play well this year for the Diamondbacks, but 96 plate appearances. So, plate appearances can be deceiving. I don't know. Does Tucker Barnhart do anything for you?
Honestly, if we're talking about just acquiring a backup catcher who's not going to catch a ton, I will say that Tucker Barnhart is a lefty. And so if you're looking for somebody to be not necessarily the strong side of the platoon with Ryan Jeffers, but take some at-bats away from him against righties so that basically all of Jeffers' plate appearances or all the plate appearances against lefties go to Ryan Jeffers. I could stomach that. It's a very small sample size last year, but Barnhart did have a 78 OPS plus against righties. That is better than Christian Vazquez did, on the whole for the year.
It's a hilarious slash line, I might add. It's an 84 weighted runs created plus, 216, 355, 255.
I mean, it's just if that's what you're wanting to do, sure.
Yeah.
I don't hate that. When you're talking about a backup catcher, I think that we've almost been spoiled as Twins fans, not just with Joe Mauer, but even just the last 5 years, where just about every catcher has been somewhat of a name, I guess, with maybe if you go back far enough to Alex Avila, I guess.
I'd say post Juan Centeno era.
Yeah. And so you're not talking about for most teams, your backup catcher is not somebody who has like a recognizable name other than the fact that it's like, that dude is a backup catcher. And so, there could be some value in just having that backup catcher that we don't necessarily pay too much attention to, like that class of player, because even Christian Vazquez is a big name for a backup catcher. Obviously, it would kind of require, the Twins to kind of do away with their two catcher philosophy and treat Ryan Jeffers as an everyday-ish catcher pushing 100 games. But I think that Tucker Barnhart could fit pretty well.
How about Kurt Casale? Has been on some pretty analytically friendly teams in the past, Tampa Bay, San Francisco. I don't know how you'd grade out Cincinnati in that regard, probably better than they've been, but negative WAR the last 2 years, but there's been some defensive value. Right-handed stick, 36 years old, so there's not a lot of how do you differ from Ryan Jeffers? And he's hit he's good to hit 210, 205, 200 every year. Does he do anything for you?
I mean, he's a backup catcher. Again, I mean, he hasn't been a great fielder, even though he has been with some more analytically minded organizations over the last few years. But at the same time, I don't know. I think that there's just some aspect to this where we kind of have to get over the idea of having some great. I'm almost okay if you're able to move enough of Christian Vazquez's money, where it's just sure, Kurt Casale, that works. I'll stomach him batting ninth. I mean, hopefully, and this is one of the things that I think is important to recognize is if the Twins are going to be a successful team next year, they're going to have offensive production at pretty much every single position. Right now, as you look at their prospective lineup, if we have to deal with kind of crud at catcher for 60 games a year, sure. I would love to see Maldonado. Right. I mean, honestly, sure. I would take today's Maldonado right now, as long as that means that Christian Vazquez is moved and you're getting sufficient money eaten by another team. I think I think my thing always just comes back to how much is the new team taking from Christian Vazquez's contract, after which point I am good with basically any just run-of-the-mill backup catcher.
Okay, here's a guy that I don't understand because, he got cut just in the middle of the season. Elias Diaz.
Yeah. I mean, sure. I mean, he did sort of well down the stretch for San Diego, if I remember correctly.
Power, no real average, but he hit for power.
And I don't think that he's really heralded as a great defender, but shoot, if we're at the end of the offseason and he is still hanging around, I would be excited to have him jump on board. But yeah, I don't know what his market is going to be, I think is the big thing. What do you think that Elias Diaz is going to get?
I mean, 1 year and $4 million, $3 million, 2.5 maybe.
Would you do that if the Twins moved Vazquez's money?
All of it? Yes. If you lose 5 of Vazquez and you spend half of that again on a backup that I'm not sure about, because again, he'd be more of an offensive-minded backup. You already have an offensive-minded starter. So I mean, do you how much do you want to zig while the other guy zags? And I don't know the answer to that. So he's on the list. There's a few other catchers, and we'll go over them here as the show progresses. Who are kind of in that mix for me. And so it's just going to come down to personal preference for Derek Falvey. But if Diaz is their target, I will look at it and be okay. Yeah. Depending on, if you were to get rid of all of Vazquez's money and then spend the 7.5 difference on combined with whether it's a savings from trading Willie Castro or whatever, on a decent needle moving starter, even if it's a trade and you're figuring in the salary of whoever you bring in, if you trade for somebody making $13 million, then I think that that those puzzle pieces fit together for me. If you are trading Vazquez, eating $5 million, and then using up $4 of that million to sign, Tucker Barnhart, honestly, then I'd rather just stay the course.
Yeah, actually, I do want to ask you kind of a follow-up question to that. I know this is your show, but
No,
I'm going to take the reins real quick. Would you be willing to attach some level of prospect to Christian Vazquez if you can't find a team to eat all $10 million of his contract? Would you be willing to ship somebody else out with him?
Like, would I be getting something at least semi-interesting back?
I don't know. I guess that's part of your answer.
Yeah,
it depends.
If I could identify like, a reliever who's like measurables, I really like Ryan Presley before the Twins Rule 5'd him. If I could identify a prospect like that on someone's team, and I'm shipping out while attaching like a Noah Miller or lower, yeah, that's I'd probably listen, assuming the money all goes. Then yeah, I would be willing to get creative, and also too, I think this offseason, I'm more of the idea of like, if you're going to want to make aggressive moves and you can't spend any money, you may as well just throw your hat in for Garrett Crochet or something. Like, I know they're not going to trade him to the Twins because they tried to get Eric Fetty, and Fetty would target that Dave and I have talked about ad nauseum. But if it comes down to it, your prospect cachet, not cash money, is probably where you're going to have to deal from. And if that includes dealing in a deal with Vazquez to clear space and maybe get back someone intriguing, yeah, I mean, I'm pretty open-minded to that.
I also think that there's a decent possibility that a Christian Vazquez trade involves somebody else's bad contract. And maybe not bad contract, but some other major leaguer who's making like $3-4 million come back with him or for him. I could also see kind of Derek Falvey doing something along those lines. It's such a conundrum. I think this whole offseason, for some reason, like the biggest talking point all offseason has been, what are they going to do with Christian Vazquez's $10 million? It's like the most boring offseason ever. That this is the thing that everybody's wringing their hands over. And then, what sort of money are they going to get back? Like, what can you pivot and use that $5 to $10 million on? And it's such a sad position for fans to be in and people who cover the team to be in. But I don't know. It's very funny. It is such a kooky offseason in that regard.
Well, and this is the year where, like, there are worse years to not be doing something. Like, if you look at the talent in the
of course, yes,
version of the roster, it's more you get upset that you're not supplementing when you've got a chance than you are, boy, this is an incomplete team. I mean, you've got 3-4 guys in the bullpen who are all pretty solid. You don't know what you're going to get out of Justin Topa, but again, basically you're playing with house money there. Your offense, I mean, you've got Jose Miranda and Royce Lewis, and you have Brooks Lee, and you have all these guys who don't have set spots. But if you can hit on even 2 or 3 of them, you've got a solid foundation for an offense. Who doesn't want to see what Matt Wallner's capable of in a healthy season if he doesn't have, that initial cratering like he did this year? I mean, there is a crazy amount of talent in this organization right now that is major league ready or major league adjacent, to where it's not bleak, but it's also like, why can't you just add payroll instead of stop doing the things you're doing?
Yeah, there's almost an aspect, and this is, I mean, the other, big trade guy right now with Chris Paddock. I've been operating under the assumption that he's just not going to be a Twin since like July of last year. But there's this aspect right now where, the team can't really do anything of note until either Paddock or Vazquez are moved. And then basically you're just kind of in a holding pattern until they can find a trade partner who's willing to take on a lot of that money. I mean, I feel like Chris Paddock is going to go somewhere for his whole contract. I think that they're going to be able to move all that. But the Twins literally cannot do anything of note or like beyond a minor league signing until one or both of those guys, or Willie Castro, I suppose, if you want to kind of expand that out, are moved. And so we're stuck having these conversations.
Unless they have one of those deals on the deck where they know it's going to happen and could make a move. I think that's really only the caveat. Before we go to our last break, two aggressively cooked guys that I wonder what you think about, or possibly aggressively cooked. Martin Maldonado was an absolute disaster piece in Chicago, and then Yan Gomes, who's like the quintessential backup catcher. Either of those guys do anything for you?
Honestly, I've have a soft spot for a guy like Martin Maldonado, who's just like comically, like I don't want to say he's bad. He is really bad at the plate.
Vazquez got monstered by the Space Jam, the Monstars. Like if that happens, Martin Maldonado is left.
But I have an old school streak, and any guy who's got like a good reputation for handling a pitching staff, I'm like, yeah, sure, whatever. He can bat 100, and I'll deal with it as long as the pitchers like him. That's not always the best method, but sure.
Let's your bench is deep enough to hit for him late in games.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Which with the team.
Are you sure about that?
Well, I mean, in the sense that, like, you're going to have a Trevor Larnach or an Austin Martin, someone who you like more offensively than Martin Maldonado.
Right, yes, of course.
Situationally, I'm not saying you're going to have a great hitter on the bench at all times, but you're going to have someone who's a better matchup. You might find the new Kyle Farmer and have somebody who's at least a weapon against lefties, or someone like that where, at least you can get Maldi out of there, and you like Jeffers enough to throw him in the game in the seventh inning, and you're not sacrificing that much in terms of handling a staff. And it's going to be a staff that Jeffers knows well anyway.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
Let's take the second of our two breaks. And then when we come back, I'm just going to ask you more about catchers. We're going to forget about these other two segments because I shouldn't have been shocked, but we got long-winded. But again, break. Are you rocking with Gametime yet? Because if you're not, you should be. Download that Gametime app. If you like going to live events like I do, whether it's a comedy show, theater, music, or, of course, sports events like your Vikings, Gophers, Twins, Wild, Timberwolves, you name it, they've got it. And I'll be honest with you, I love on the app that you can toggle all-in pricing, and then you can find out from the beginning of the transaction how much you're going to be paying. None of that bait and switch on the back end where it says you're paying 20, and then at the end of the transaction, somehow the number's $40 because of convenience fees. I don't know who those are convenient for, but no, not here, not on Gametime. I absolutely love it for that. Also, too, panoramic seat views. You can get a great view of what you're going to be seeing in front of you, whether it's a stage, a ball field, you name it. They'll show you what the view is going to look like so that you do not go into an event with no idea what it's going to look like from where you're sitting. And you get the lowest price guarantee, or Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. So if you find that ticket cheaper elsewhere, they're going to take care of you and give you a little extra besides. And your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the game today. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Take the guesswork out of buying concert tickets with Gametime, but terms do apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB, and you'll get $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Well, hey, we're back, and we are talking about catchers, which I'm sure everybody loves to talk about. But Twins in a weird spot when it comes to Christian Vazquez, and how much do they trust Ryan Jeffers? And I think if they trade Christian Vazquez, who they add, because it's not going to be the youngster. Why is his name
Camargo.
not? Yeah, Jair Camargo. Not going to be him as the primary backup. I think that's probably not a shocker to anybody who follows this team on an even semi-close basis. But if the Twins were to sign a Yan Gomes or someone of that ilk, it'd be pretty obvious that they're saying, listen, we are going to give the reins to Jeffers. We're going to let him catch 100 games, 110 games, and see what happens. If they go for one of these guys that I'm looking at here, I'm going to it's probably a 3-pack that I think probably all are somewhat in that starter-ish mold. but I think could probably be had for less than $10 million a year. I guess I don't think there's any catcher free agent that's getting $10 million, which is why this whole thing is complicated in the first place. But there's three, and they're actually, ironically enough, alphabetically next up on the list after Jan Gomes. There's Yasmani Grandal, who had a brilliant dead cat bounce with the Pirates this last year. I shouldn't say brilliant, but it was decent. Danny Jansen, who probably has the most of a ceiling among all current free agent catchers. I think that's probably damning with faint praise. And then Carson Kelly, who is 30 and has been starter-ish at points in his career. Actually, I believe he had a really good year with the Diamondbacks, but a few years back, but he's been decent-ish. Where do you lean on those three guys?
Yeah, I mean, I guess my lean is toward not spending a ton of money. And I think that probably Grandal goes for. Did I just lose Brandon?
Just a brief second, you were gone. You're back.
Okay, cool. Sorry. Yeah, I was going to say, I think I lean toward Grandal maybe as the name that intrigues me the most. He hits righties better. His framing numbers are still really good. And I also think that he's probably going to get less than the other two, just at his age. I don't think that he is in line for a multi-year deal, whereas I think that Carson Kelly or Jansen, both being 29, could be in that multi-year deal market. So if the Twins manage to get Yasmani Grandal on a reasonable contract, I wouldn't hate it. And if he does bottom out again at the plate, he's still an incredible defensive catcher, at least framing wise. And I would take that. Not much of an arm anymore, or ever maybe, but I would take that in a heartbeat.
So Davis kind of mentioned that he thinks he might be kind of a sourpuss, or like a, maybe not necessarily off-putting, but just little chilly personality wise. Does that matter to you whatsoever?
I am a big clubhouse chemistry guy, actually. I think that they've got a clubhouse that can handle somebody like that. I really, I would need to hear the specifics on, what exactly, rubs people the wrong way about the guy. I don't have access to that information, but I've never really been turned off completely by like a singular dude who's just kind of a pain in the butt. If you're going to have a player who's kind of a sourpuss, as you said it, I wouldn't hate that being a catcher, that kind of comes a little bit with the territory. I don't think that, I know that there was a lot of said about like Josh Donaldson when he joined the team about having, bringing an edge. And I think that was a little bit overblown, but I think that this is a clubhouse that can handle, a guy or two who might rub people the wrong way a little bit, as long as he's not rubbing the pitchers the wrong way and, harming them that way, I'm good with it.
Do you remember big fella Wayne Hathaway? He would sit outside the clubhouse. He had he was this tiny little guy, and he wasn't very well known, I think, outside the organization, but he was like their laundry guy towards the end of his life, because he just was very decrepit. Tiny little old man. You talk about rubbing pitchers the wrong way. It reminds me of Terry Ryan's story, where Hathaway was the team's trainer back in 70-something, and he was rubbing Terry Ryan's arm down before he was going to pitch that night. He goes, Wayne, that's great, but I throw with the other arm. Like, he doesn't rub down on the wrong arm. That's how you rub a pitcher the wrong way, in my opinion. But yeah, I think if you were to get Jansen or Kelly, that would signal more of a, listen, we're trying to find an exit strategy with Jeffers, or in the most rosy way possible, we're going to really try to do this two-catcher thing and do it right. I don't think they're in the budgetary space to do that second thing. I think it's got to be, if someone comes calling for Jeffers and offers you, let's say, a ARB 1 or ARB 2 guy who you think you can turn into the best version of themselves, not I'm trying to think like someone from the Marlins, maybe, because the Marlins seem to not be great at pitching development. Well, they're good at it, but the Twins did well by Pablo, and I think you can get someone away from kind of a dumpster fire of an organization, and that helps by itself. If you could do that with Jeffers and then sign like a Danny Jansen, who right-handed stick, turns 30 early in the season, and is 1 year removed from being solid, not great. Again, 115 weighted runs created plus in 2023, 141 the year before. He's been in a timeshare with Alejandro Kirk, got traded last year, spent some time in Boston, but was pretty much a non-factor there. But, you're talking 90 to 100 weighted runs created plus and some defense. I think it would make some sense, but again, only if you're flipping Jeffers and then figuring something out for your backup catcher. And I'm not sure how much wisdom there is in signing Jansen and needing another catcher in the same offseason. I think that's probably pretty risky.
Well, and I do want to point out that Ryan Jeffers only has 2 more years of team control. So there could be some validity to them going out and getting a multi-year catcher because, if you look at what they have on the farm right now, obviously Camargo is there. He's, probably destined for a 5-year career as a backup catcher. After that, there's not really much catcher depth. There's not a lot of depth that you feel like in the next year or two could get in there right now, at least. I don't think Ricardo Olivar is a long-term catcher, for example. And so I do think that there could be some sort of move where they acquire somebody with team control, whether that is somebody who's pre-arb early in arbitration or maybe a Danny Jansen type. Because, if you're looking ahead a few years, you need another catcher in this organization. And unless they're looking to extend Ryan Jeffers, I don't know, there needs to be some sort of plan there. I do not think, though, that if you were to sign a Kelly or a Jansen to a multi-year deal, I don't think that Ryan Jeffers is on the team next year. I don't think that they're going to pay that amount of money for 2 catchers. I'm guessing in arbitration, Jeffers is going to end up somewhere around an 8-9 figure next year. And so you probably would be planning an early exit for Jeffers, even if it was a tandem this year.
Arise style, get out of there before it gets too expensive.
Right. Yeah. So that is something I think we should be aware of. It could be one of those under the radar moves that Falvey makes every single offseason where everybody's very fixated on, there's 4 moves right now that everybody is super fixated on, 4 needs, whatever. Could definitely see some sort of acquisition for a catcher that has team control longer than Ryan Jeffers does right now.
Well, and I think if you are trying to figure out what you have in Ryan Jeffers and you want to give him 1 full year in the penultimate year before his free agency eligibility, then that's when you trade Vazquez, sign Yan Gomes, and say, listen, Jeffers, put up or shut up. Not shut up, but put up or put down, whatever. Let's see what you got, and we'll work on
We're not putting down our catchers.
No, true.
Send him to a farm upstate.
Yeah, well, that would work in Minnesota, but it would make some sense to do a, let him say, hey, you're going to catch 100 games this year, and that'll determine if we want to offer you an extension or not. And so there's a lot of things at play here. What I'm going to do before I let you go here is I'm going to read off the rest of the free agents. And I just want to know if any of these guys trips your trigger. I'm not going to say this correctly, but Andrew Kinsner, I don't know. Luke Maley, not Tyler Malley, but make sure you Google him. James McCann, Reese McGuire, hold the jokes, please. Omar Narvaez, Tomas Nido, do the Nido shuffle. Ollie Sanchez, Gary Sanchez, oh boy. And then Brian Servant. Any of those do anything for you?
Ollie Sanchez is a guy who I thought was going to be really good.
He's only 28.
So there's that little voice in the back of my head that's like, oh, there might still be something there. But I've been burned on that so many times. I guess in terms of a fit, if you're looking at somebody like a Narvaez, I could see, because he's left-handed, His metrics were pretty nice in terms of his defense a couple of years ago, but those have kind of fallen off a cliff. If they feel like
Robinson Chirinos vibe of like, teams who love him are going to love him, and he's going to kick around for a long time. And that left-handed swinger, I mean, there's some defense there. I think he hit 154 last year. His weighted run plus was 8.
Yeah.
So like
yeah. If you think that you can get his dead cat bounce, if you think that you look at him and you say, this is a very Twins thing to do, but you say, oh, well, 3 years ago he was really good and he's not that old and he fits the system really well. I mean, he would if you just closed your eyes and thought of a perfect backup catcher for Ryan Jeffers that you could get for the minimum, it's probably Omar Narvaez. And if they see something where they can, get his framing metrics turned around and they can just get him to hit 200 against righties as opposed to 150, sure, I could stomach that. I hope it doesn't get to that point, but okay.
A Henry Blanco or a fourth Molina brother situation. Wait, how many Molinas? Yes. Yeah, there's been 3 Molinas. There could be a fourth.
Yes, Benji Jose Yadier.
I don't know who I was forgetting because they're all notable in their own way. But yeah, I think, and if that doesn't work, if you sign him and it doesn't work, you can trade for a Sandy Leon type. And having Ryan Jeffers as the elephant in the room, there are so many worse things. I mean, we were privy to / subjected to a half season of Juan Centeno back there, which oh boy. Although I will, fun fact, comma. He was the first catcher to throw out Billy Hamilton, if I'm not mistaken.
I mean, everybody has some sort of claim to fame. No, but I think that's also a really good point, though, is that if we're talking about backup catchers, there is always going to be a backup catcher out there that you can just take and you can play him every 3 or 4 days. He's not going to hit, but he's a good clubhouse presence. You can get him for a minor league trade. It could be a midseason, whatever. Sandy Leon, you don't want Sandy Leon catching even every 3 or 4 days. But if you need Sandy Leon to catch every 3 or 4 days, okay, you'll stomach it.
Yeah. Well, they said it couldn't be done, but we spent 42.5 minutes talking about backup catchers, and it was an absolute delight. Greg, thank you so much for your time. And honestly, I'm going to probably lean on you as much as I can in Dave's absence because this was absolutely delightful.
Good. I can't wait until we get to the topic, is a hot dog a sandwich?
Well, boy, we're out of time here. And so he's Gregg Masterson, at Gregg T. Masterson on the tweets. Where are you at on the skeets?
Gregg T. Masterson, making it easy.
We love a consistent king in our lives. I'm at Brandon_Warren, and then at Warren on the blue skis. And this has been Locked On Twins. We thank you so much for hanging out with us. You want to help with the finale here? We'll see ya
tomorrow
night. That's how you know if someone listens all the time. They'll know the last part. Put you on the spot.